Good evening and welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families, and we are excited to have you join us for the next 30 minutes as we talk about the good, bad, and ugly of relationships. A huge shout out to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinemas, and Maxwell Construction. We are so thankful for these local businesses who have made this show possible. So whether you are listening live or online, Rock Solid Radio, helping to strengthen our community one family at a time on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.
Well, honey, we survived our first show.
No way. They actually invited us back. That's crazy.
That's always a plus. You know?
Yeah, well, let's see what we can do to keep it rolling.
We are so thankful that you have tuned in. Hopefully, if you didn't listen to our first show, I really encourage you to go back on the podcast and to listen to kind of a little bit about who we are and where we come from, where Rock Solid comes from. You know, it's so important to us that you understand kind of just the foundation that we are kind of building the show on and why we're doing what we're doing. But we really wanted to come this week and...
Wait. This was a surprise, a secret. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right.
Are you gonna expose the secret today?
Yeah, well, you again, you don't like surprises.
I know.
This is a man who doesn't like me to buy him surprises. He'd rather go buy. Any guys out there? Are there any guys in Eagle Country that don't like surprises?
Well, you know what? Because I know what I like. and I would just rather go get it myself than have a surprise and go, I really don't like that.
Yeah.
Because then everybody's awkward. So
and then you have to pretend that you liked it.
But suppose we have a secret surprise today. Because what we're going to reveal today is actually, really, it is foundational to not just our families, but it's foundation through our culture, through our society, that if we really want to see a difference in this country, it starts at what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
The civility can only come through what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. And so I'm excited.
Yeah. I mean, it could be your marriage with your children. If you're a boss, you know, with your employees, with your friends, neighbors, really anyone, we think it's a lost virtue in our society today. I feel like when we watch the news, it's a lot of it because of this lost virtue. So the thought of this really is important, and we really wanted it to be one of our first shows that you go back and listen to, share with your friends, because this is a lost art. So, you know, what we're talking about is really loving others by serving them.
Whoa, there it is.
Yeah.
Serving
them by putting someone else's needs above your own. So we're going to be talking today a little bit, you know, think about today's culture. Think about the people that you run into on the street, in the store, at the ball game. When you fly by an old friend you haven't seen in a long time, you used to ask, how are you? And what did they say?
I'm fine, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be, you know, you give that pleasantry, you know, it might not have been reality and the truth, but you kind of said that. But nowadays, when someone comes up to you and they ask, how are you? What is it that they usually get?
Well, what's funny is they won't even have to ask, how are you? Because now we can all stare at our cell phones, right?
Yeah.
So you know, now we just get this staring and not even wanting to be involved and acknowledging others. And then finally, when you do get to somebody, they usually have this like heavy sigh of, I'm so freaked out, I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed.
Busy.
Yeah. And we're guilty. Linda teases me about shopping at Kroger's, which, by the way, we love Kroger's.
Yeah.
But I do not like going to Kroger's with all those people when that's all I need is a gallon of milk.
Yeah. And don't make eye contact.
Yeah. So I I run in.
There's got to be other people in Eagle Country that run into Kroger's hoping they don't see anybody.
Yeah.
Especially girls, ladies. Let's face it. You know, you don't have any makeup on. You got workout pants on, or you didn't do your hair, and that's when you see everybody in town at Kroger's. So, or Remke's. Either one.
Well, yeah. And so you got to get in, get out, because we are busy. Do you know how busy we are? Busy.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of lost that idea of slowing down a little bit and looking at maybe what somebody else might need.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes to the pace in which we're living today. And we talked last week, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our first show, we talked about the epidemic of anxiety going on, and not just adults, but kids. And really the kids are picking up on our rushed spirit and our anxiousness, and it's really translating into them. And so I feel like if we could just slow down and realize that maybe we need to do something different in our home, in our family, in our community. Right. It's just sad. So trust me, this program is for all of us.
Yeah, we're talking to ourselves again today too, and that's kind of part of this. This is always that we talked earlier in the first show about challenging each other, and so. This is not about whether you can be perfect. This is about you becoming more mindful, more aware, and start developing different practices that you can maybe turn into habit that will ultimately make your family better, your relationship better. And then, hey, you know what? If your family is stronger, I guarantee you our community is going to be stronger.
Absolutely.
Your schools are stronger and everything else. So this does start at home, and it starts with really your outlook. So
yeah.
So tell me about, let's start with what our expectation was for our kiddos.
Well, yeah, let's start with their babies, okay? Because, when we talk about serving, we start it when they're babies, and when they're born, our babies as moms and dads, God has called us to love our little ones by meeting their physical needs, serving them because they can't do for themselves. So as a parent, I remember those days of, oh my gosh, being at 2 a.m. This is before internet. So I'm sitting up and I'm looking out the window in Batesville and looking
I would have been, but you were just faster than me to get out of bed.
Well,
that's all.
And you used to say, because I was nursing, I would help if I could.
I did not have all the
honey.
equipment to take care of those needs, babe.
But, here I was in the middle of the night, so exhausted. And if there's other mothers out there in Eagle Country, I hear you. And hopefully you get me. I was so tired, but my job was to serve my baby, to change their diaper, to feed them, to hold them, because they cannot soothe themselves yet. So as a parent, we love our little ones and we take care of them. Why? Because they can't do for themselves. So that's the littlest stage. But then, oh goodness, then they get older and they start to know and start to play you. And you get
mean
into
like
those.
The terrible twos?
We've gone through that a few times.
Yeah. So what happens here is the slow awakening of self. All right. So all of a sudden, that little guy who's 18, 19, 20 months, he's still just sort of trying to figure out walking and all that. And once they get through that, then all of a sudden, they start to see that they are not
power.
Just part of the world. They are the world, They can start to work and manipulate. And again, because it's self-discovery. And right now, everything is just to stimulate them. And what an exciting time, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot of parents out there that probably have different words for it.
And so their excitement is at your detriment. So, but here's where we kick in, though. Mom and Dad, I need you to listen here, okay? Because even at the age of 2 to 3 years of age, this is when, if your goal for your child to someday be a contributor, independent person to our society, if your goal is that, then at the age of 2 to 3, you can actually start, you need to start with teaching them about servanthood. Yeah. And so as a toddler, we're not talking about slavery. We're not talking about putting crazy demands on them. We're starting to talk about them being accountable to other people.
And themselves. I mean, let's face it, at first, really at the age of 2, they got to learn to start doing for themselves.
Sure, yes. Yeah, and not have other people serving them all the time. Yeah,
right.
And so, at the age of 2, they can help contribute to the home by doing simple chores. Like, you can say very simple things like, help me clean up your toys.
Right.
They can help clean up. They know where those
toys go.
Throw
the diaper in the garbage can.
Yes. Help carry this item from point A to point B. These kinds of things, because you see this all the time. These kids have these physical capabilities, but we as parents, we've got so much to do and everything, and we just would rather do it ourselves sometimes. And the kid just acts
Did
like
you
they need
see
to be
the
served.
video? Oh, our grandchildren who live way too far away. Our daughter-in-law sent us a video of our two little ones, and one's 2 and one's just a little over a year, and putting toys away. And even the littlest one, who just learned how to walk, is learning how to put his toys in the basket. And it missed the basket.
Yeah, they were kind of going to the basket.
It was so cute.
He's got a heck of an arm on him.
And he missed the basket, and you heard him go, uh-oh, and he literally crawled over to put that toy back in the basket. That starts so early.
Right. And they're starting to be contributors to the home, all right? And so that's our first act of service.
Yeah, and so that's young when they're 2 or 3, but then they start to become preschoolers, elementary age. So, honey, tell us a little bit, your experience in the school.
Coming from the elementary years, this was always kind of shocking to me. I grew up and had chores and jobs and different responsibilities that we had to do. We had 5 kids in my family, so you had to put forth a little bit of effort to kind of hang in.
Which, by the way, I'm sure they're going to listen at some point. So they all were contributors to the family.
Well, I
right?
worked a lot harder than they did, and that we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I'm
but
sure you'll get
I was the main contributor to the success of the home as a 5-year-old.
In Merrill's family, there was, and a lot of folks listening will know members of your family, but there were 2 girls. There were 2 twin boys, and then there was Merrill in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle.
Poor guy. So deprived.
Yeah, we made that work, though. But anyway, when I work with parents of our elementary school kids, it is shocking to me to ask the question, what chores or responsibilities do your kids have around the house? And
it's pretty scary, the response.
Yeah,
sometimes.
quite often it's like, well, they really don't. They don't have anything. Or if you ask the kids, they'll tell you, I don't do anything.
Right.
And that is not going to help them in the long run.
Right.
They can be a contributor. They can start to participate. And so, we found in our house, we've got chores. You've got your chores. And it's not so that you can work. It's so that you can contribute to the home.
Right.
Because we need you.
Right.
If you're not doing your part, somebody else is going to have to.
Yeah.
And so that puts a stress on that person. So we need their service.
Yeah. We actually had this conversation. Again, if you didn't listen to our first show, we adopted 3 children, and they were all in the elementary age. And there was simple things like opening a door for someone. We would go into a restaurant or into a store, and they all would just literally let the door slam each other in the head. And we try to help them understand just by opening a door and serving others, loving others by serving. And it got to be kind of cool to watch them and the compliments they would get. I mean, that's pretty sad when there's so many people out there who notice that, because it doesn't happen very often. Why can't we do simple serving and loving people, just like opening a door for people?
Right. And the purpose in the serving, too, is just so that for a moment in time, you stop thinking about what you want. And you look out and you see what somebody else might need or want.
Right.
That's
huge.
So shifting the focus off of you and onto somebody else, and then helping them if it warrants it. And so that's our key here, of trying to get your child, and really all of us within our home, to realize that we occasionally have to take the shift off of us, and we need to see what else is out there.
Hun, there's a lot of parents out there listening that I've talked to, that you've worked with, that say, oh, but I want them to have a better life than me. I had to do all this stuff, and I don't want them to have to do. I mean, that they equate that with love. That's not love.
Yeah.
Coddling them and enabling them and doing for them is not love. So please, if you're listening, you're not doing your children any favors. Now, we're going to be talking about serving them and loving them, but when they can do for themselves and they can do for others, that's huge.
Right. Well, and without getting too much on this soapbox, we hear the complaining all the time of the generation coming up, the millennials are entitled and all of that sort of thing. Well, we don't need to blame those millennials. All right.
Need to blame their parents.
Yeah, we parented these children.
Yeah.
And by the way, Linda and I have 2 of those children, okay?
Yeah.
And again, we're very proud of them. They are servants. They serve in our military, and they're excellent guys. But that entitlement, that I keep hearing that word entitlement in our, not just this generation, but it seems to be rattling throughout generations, comes from us being self-centered,
You're right.
rather than outwardly focused. And so that's
someone
the thing.
else's needs above your own.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing that we're going to try to start to emphasize in our home. Well, what do other folks need here?
Yeah, so elementary age, we really have to get them on to that habit because that's not going to be their nature. That's not going to be their go-to. And as teenagers, I will tell you, we've got two of
All
them
bets
right
are
now.
off.
If you're listening out there in Eagle Country, I'm sure that you are feeling some pain of the narcissism and the self-centeredness of a teenager. I get it. And they regress. They really do regress, which is so
Well, they
reason.
become like terrible twos, but they're
do.
just terrible teens.
They are. They are.
Because they start
But they
to
need
recognize.
that discipline just as much as the
yeah.
terrible two
Yeah.
of it's not about you. There's other people in the world we can do for others. And so that's super important. And if you don't take care of that now, then as a young adult, when they're at their workplace and the first time they're asked to do something they don't like or do a shift they don't want to do, they won't be ready to quit like we see so many today are doing because they've been served so much at home, they don't know how to serve. So I love that movie. I hate it and I love it. That movie called Failure to Launch.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, right.
He's
Yeah, that's a
very
different show.
good looking.
Yeah.
But, that story is so sad, but it's a reality in so many homes today where we see young adults still sitting on the couch and their mom's doing their laundry and cooking and doing the grocery for them because they're not willing to do themselves. No one's trained them and taught them. It starts really young.
Yeah, we do see a lot of parents who embrace this, and through the elementary and teenage years and young adulthood, they emphasize ministry work, mission work, going out and doing different things, and that's. We have to have these formal little mission programs now because we have to be very intentional because it's so easy for our kids to just slip into me.
Right.
And so, but it is awesome for us to expose our kids to the world of service, and we oftentimes can do that through mission work and stuff like that. But listen, there's a mission in your own home.
Absolutely.
And
your own community.
Yeah.
So, we've seen it. Kids get stuck in that age, but, why not stand and serve someone instead of letting them sit and be served? And so, we say all that not to coddle your children and serve them all the time, spoil them and entitle them. But, there's a difference between carrying your own load. I want to talk a little bit about this because this is huge. In a healthy boundary class I teach this a lot about carrying your own load and carrying each other's burdens. The Bible in Galatians 6 talks about both. And I remember doing this lesson with some students at the middle school, which is a perfect age. And I had one student come up and bring her backpack. And we talked about everybody has their own backpack. Everybody has their own load. And that we're called to carry our own load, not for someone else to do it for us. And so the fact that we can do that, but that at some point there are things that happen in our life that are overwhelming and that burden gets too great. It might be a job loss in your family. It might be cancer that wreaks havoc in your home. It might be a flood that takes out your house.
Wow,
like a lot of folks are struggling with right now. So there's a storm. We talked last week about the wise and foolish builders and about the fact that there were two homes, one built by a wise man, one built by a foolish man, but they both had storms.
Yes, storms are going to hit all of us.
And it's what kind of foundation we've built on. Is it firm enough? Is it unshakable enough to withstand the storm? And so, those burdens that come, the Bible says to carry each other's burdens. But then just a couple lines later, it says to carry your own load. So, I feel like there are times in our life when the burdens are too great and life is so overwhelming. There's a health crisis or whatever. Then who's going to step up? Who's going to step up and help? You know?
Well, and, we have seen this in our own family with our boys being in the military, and they do some pretty neat work there. And part of what their programming is about is you better carry your own load because we need you to do that.
The 40-pound pack.
Yeah, the 40-pound ruck and all the training and stuff that those guys go through. But then they also are trained that when they see a man unable, giving their best, but a man's unable for whatever reason, that a true a true soldier jumps in and helps that man.
Right. Yeah.
And again, that's a decision that is made in the moment of, hey, I don't know that this guy can carry his load right now, and that's
Right.
when it becomes a burden,
Right.
right? And so I'm going to help carry that burden. But the idea that I have my eyes on those other folks to see how I can help them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're stressing here.
Yeah. Andy Stanley, he's one of my favorite authors, speakers, minister down in North Point, down in Georgia. He often speaks about talking about powering down and putting someone else's needs above your own, looking at someone you care about, whether it be your spouse or your friend or your neighbor, and say, how can I help? I love that line. If we could walk away with anything this week, I pray that it would be just, those are powerful words. How can I help? Basically, you're saying, whatever I got going on in my life, I know I'm busy. I think sometimes when we say I'm busy, we're basically saying, don't bother me with your stuff.
Right, yeah.
I don't want to
Kind of like when I'm at Kroger's.
yeah, I don't want to carry your load right now. But if we could just pause and just say and mean it, how can I help? Man, that is powerful. And man, in a relationship, that you could be speaking your partner's love language. Honey, my
yours.
love language
Yeah.
is acts of service. So when you are willing to come home and say, hey, can I unload the dishwasher for you? Can I cook dinner for you?
What can I do for you?
Yeah, how can I help? And that is so huge. And maybe your partner's love language isn't. We'll be talking about love languages, by the way, in another show. But, maybe your partner's love language is quality time. Just stopping what you're doing and taking a walk with your partner, or sitting and talking with them. Or maybe their love language is words, and maybe you stop and you write a handwritten card. I mean, nowadays, when people get a handwritten card in the mail,
What's that?
wow, like put a stamp on it. People are blown away. Like, wow, you stopped to think of me. So something as simple as a card or a text, whether it be bringing home your wife's favorite ice cream, or something like that, is just huge. So.
Well, let me back up just for a second on the marriage part. How can I help? And I know. We've gotten into this crazy thing about our marriages, and Linda and I are just like you guys. We have our disagreements and our days where we struggle back and forth on different things, whether it's getting ready for a radio show or whatever. And we have to come in to acknowledge each other for who they are and what they bring to the table. And so I think you probably have heard that 50-50 thing before. Oh, well, I do 50%,
right.
and she
like
does 50%.
You step to the line
yeah,
and don't go over
and
it.
I'm not doing that because they don't do their part, And it's like, that is so detrimental to the growth of your home.
Yeah.
First off, we have to assume that we're doing the best for our marriage. Right. We're serving our marriage. And so on my best day, I'm not going to look at the details that Linda's going to. I'm not going to be as nurturing as Linda's going to. But I am going to be better at holding a firm line on discipline, at making sure that the chores outside are getting done, at making a quick decision of yes or no, and that's kind of the final. But that's more to our wiring. And so I give 100% of what and who I am to serve our marriage.
At least that's your attempt, your try.
And some days it's not,
right.
it doesn't seem to
Maybe
measure
you're
up.
tired, you're sick.
Yeah. But it's 100% of who I am. And I know that you give 100% of who you are to our family and to our marriage every day. And so it's that service to the others, stepping outside of yourself. Yeah. And if we can do that in the marriage, wow.
Yeah. And in our community, I do hate when I hear that, it's a 50-50. It's not. It's 100-100. And that way, even if you can't give anything, and there are a lot of relationships out there where it can't be 100-100. Maybe you are serving your spouse who has a chronic illness, or a child right now who is in serious illness. And so there's days where you don't have it, but when that other person is giving 100%, everybody's going to be okay. And what a better community this would be. Jesus talks, again, if you're not a Christ follower, if you're not somebody that believes in the Bible, I get it. We've done a bad job of representing him. but his word is truth in my mind, and it is the foundation I build my life on. And in Mark 10:45, it says, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many.
This is probably one of the scriptures that completely opens my mind to how crazy and revolutionary Christ is.
Yeah.
Because that whole idea, in our mind, we think of leaders and kings and presidents are those to be served.
Right.
We honor them,
Right. Bow down.
And Christ completely flipped that upside down and said, you know what, if you really want things to work, just serve. Just serve. And again, it's not natural. It's something that we work on, but it's part of the training that we need to
Before
embrace.
we finish, I got to tell you this quick story, because as we were preparing for this show, I was watching another show, and they were talking about a soldier, a Marine, who, it caught my eye because he came from the Naval Academy, which our oldest son did, and he was killed by a sniper. And in 2007, his name was Travis Manion, and he was a lieutenant in the Marine Corps. But it was crazy because right before he went on his last deployment, right before he was killed, his brother-in-law asked him, why are you doing this? Hey, pretend like you broke your leg and you can get out of deployment. And I'll never forget what I heard him say in this story that I was talking about, and it hit so much with what we're talking about. He responded to his brother-in-law without hesitating. He said, if not me, then who?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, if not me, then who? What a powerful reminder for all of us to live with character and putting other people's interests before our own. If not me, then who? And that could be true serving our country, like our oldest two do, but so many others, but in our own neighborhood, in our own family, and I just think that's huge. So let's talk a little bit about our Rock Solid Challenge for the week, because we're coming to a close. This is a two-parter, hon.
Right. I know. I see. So, okay. So, as we talked about earlier, we want to challenge ourselves, and we're going to challenge you guys. And again, part of the challenge is being mindfulness this week, being mindfulness of how you're going to handle whatever the challenges that we're going to throw out there. And this week, we really want to talk about, are you carrying your own load?
Right.
Are you doing everything that you need to do so that somebody else does not have to carry yours?
Right.
And again, this is all under the presumption that you're able to carry your own load.
Right.
All right. And you're strong. You're healthy. Are you taking care of yourself? As a parent, are you taking care of your family? Linda and I are providers. That's part of our job. Am I doing my job there? Okay. And so that's the very first thing. I have to make sure that I'm carrying my load. That is, my responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and part two, if there's someone around you that has a heavy load that is beyond their capability of carrying, would you help carry it? Is there someone around you that you can serve this week? What a difference this community would be if we all opened our eyes to those in need. And it doesn't take a lot of money. This isn't about how much money you throw at a problem. Sometimes that is not the solution. The solution is rolling up your sleeves, getting to work, doing something, and it could be something as simple as opening up a door, or sending a card to someone in need,
Yeah. And so that's our challenge for you, to be mindful of those, to start to practice those, encourage those with you, your spouse, and your kiddos, to start working through that. Man, I really would like to start talking about our next show.
No, not yet. Remember, hey.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about who the boss is.
Well, hang on.
Who the boss in my house. You know who the boss in my house is.
Oh, my gosh, he's getting out of control already. Well, hey, Rock Solid Radio is brought to you, thankfully, by our great sponsors. And again, we want to thank Buffalo Wings and Rings and La Rosa's and Greendale Cinema and Maxwell Construction for their support and really their commitment.
Wouldn't be possible without them, yes.
To making a difference in our community. So if you go into any of those, just please thank them for their support. But next Sunday evening, we were going to be talking about parenting and specifically about who's the boss in your home. So we'll hope you tune in the next Sunday evening on Rock Solid Radio from 7:30 to 8 p.m. on your hometown radio, Eagle Country Radio 99.3. Until then, have a great night. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard this evening, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinema, and Maxwell Construction. If you have questions you'd like answered on air or want to chime in on something you heard this evening, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next Sunday evening at 7:30 for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.